there was something that led to that.
Mm-hmm.
So after I'd done that dissertation on Manning, because there was this whole problem of the relation of the quotations. That again was something we all know about, but we don't want to think about. And that's true for art history to this day.
Yeah.
You buy a new book on Manning, it will not talk about that. It just will not talk about that.
Yeah.
It's just like, we don't want to think about that. So I was trying to find, at first I thought I would try to write about Courbet after Manet, and then I realized I couldn't do that because I was constantly writing paragraphs that said things like, in order to understand this, we have to go back to the 18th. And at a certain moment I realized, it was the year 70, 71, very hard year for me. Very rough year. I suddenly realized, holy fuck, I have to go back to the 18th century. If you look at my CV, there's like a blank for about 3 years. But I'm already like a young professor. I'm going to try to get tenure. But I see that I have to go back and make myself a 18. Because I see that there's something begins around the middle of the 18th century. And that goes, and then if you follow that dialectically, I didn't know the whole story yet, I'm going to get to why Manet's figures look at me the way they do. And I'm not going to be able to get back to Manet for a long time. I mean, this is 70, 71. Manet's modernism comes out in 1996, I think. It's a long time. It's 25 years. But I suddenly see I have to. It was not an exhilarating insight. It was like, in a certain sense, a moment like a truly depressing one. But I immerse myself in it. I start going back to the middle of the 18th century, and the great luck is waiting for me there is Diderot. Waiting for me is the most attractive genius, like in the history of the human race. So appealing, so smart, such a great writer, so thrilling to read, and so intelligent about these things. So I start anchoring myself, and I realize that for him the crucial issue is precisely something that I'd raised in Art and Objecthood, which is the relation of the work of art to the viewer.
Right.
And that all of this has to be thought through historically. And the whole trick, and you see it done in art, in absorption theatricality, is how to do it historically. Which is to, so here I can give you the example of what it means to do it historically in a very simple example. So I'm teaching my students, and I put up the Oath of the Horatii, David, 1785. And my claim is that it's his attempt to make a Diderottian picture that would be dramatic but not theatrical. But by the mid-1790s, we know, so 10 years later, through his student Delacluse, who becomes an art critic and writes a book about him, we know that David says to his students, the composition is un peu théâtral, it's a little theatrical, and then he goes on to paint the Sabines, and he draws back from, you could say, the overt drama. And so I say to the students, all right, was David right in 1785, or was he right in 1796? I mean, is the Oath of Horatii dramatic, or is it theatrical? Is the Sabines, or is it theatrical? Because it's going to come to look to people theatrical. And I can see the students are thinking, and I'll say, how many of you think the Oath of Horatii is dramatic and not theatrical? Some hands go up. How many think it's theatrical? I say, okay, I've tricked you. What you're supposed to do is refuse the question. You're not critics of these pictures. You are historians. What's important is to understand how the pictures were seen and understood in their own time. We do not take sides. Half the critics of Millet in the 1860s are saying, these are amazing pictures of real peasants absorbed in shoveling shit. And half the critics, including Gautier and Baudelaire, are saying, these are phony little theatrical figures pretending to be peasants, pretending to be absorbed in shoveling shit. We are not called upon to decide whether or not they're really shoveling shit. After all, they're just pictures. Nobody's shoveling anything. The important thing to understand is that as of 1860, the world of art in France is divided about this.
Uh-huh.
So that this degree of absorption no longer works for everyone, etc., etc. You're getting privileged insight into the structure of perception about art at that time. As a historian, that's what you should be in. And so the whole trick of absorption and theatricality, and everything I've done since, is that I'm never buying into the judgments.
Right.
Diderot hates Watteau. Watteau is theatrical.
Right.
Watteau is wonderful.
Right.
The important thing to understand is, for Diderot, Watteau is theatrical. And
Right.
then you see why. And so the trick was to figure out how... So that's the sense in which I am, and when I'm writing art historically, I am a fucking art historian.
Mm-hmm.
I am keeping historical distance from everything. On the one hand, I am opening myself experientially to the maximum degree to the pictures and what I think is going on in it. But then in the and I'm trying to evoke all that in the writing, but I'm also trying to keep max historical distance. So my claim is this is what's going on then.
Well, there's interesting things that you do with that. Like, for instance, in the Courbet book, where you talk about you read Baudelaire against himself.
That's exactly right. The trick was Courbet was the trickiest of all because no one could see what was going on in those pictures.
Yeah.
It was simply not seeable at that time. And Baudelaire was the proof of it because he, in a sense, he's everything Baudelaire is asking for.
Yep.
But the way I put it is the discourse of pictorial realism was so overdetermined as meaning just objective, photographic, to use another adjective Baudelaire uses, American, that no one could see that what just looked like brute realism was in fact entirely generated out of a bodily relation between Courbet and the picture.
Well, one thing that I would like your sense on is that, I personally feel that both art criticism doesn't exist anymore and that the discipline of art history is doomed or already over. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why is the outsized percentage of people who are currently pursuing art history who do contemporary art history.
It's terrible.
Because I do not believe that is a thing.
It is not a thing. It's complete right. No, there are two complementary tendencies. The other is world art history. Mm-hmm. It might be perfectly interesting to know what the Inuits were doing in 1700, but it doesn't give you any depth to operate with. This even started earlier with the whole idea of a kind of a Bild critique here in Germany. Mm-hmm. So there are very bright people there who are working on posters. I don't mean posters by a Katie Kovetz or by some great Russian. I mean just ordinary. And they will say, I don't see why this can't be judged. He said, well, it can't be because it's like you're going to hate this, but it's not made by a genius. Coming out of a profound tradition of totally serious art. Now these notions that you've learned now to just run from. It's as if you're hearing it is exactly as if I said, only white Gentiles can make art.
Yeah.
It feels exactly the same. No difference between what I just said about geniuses and pure racism. Right? And it's sort of amazing. So yeah, the contemporary art history, Ruth and I went to Australia a few years ago, and different cities, I'd meet with the art history graduate students informally in the evening. And there was a big room, big table. What do you all work? We're all working on contemporary art. And they're all working on artists who live in New York or London, whom they never met. So
they don't want to meet?
Well, their dream would be to meet them and be able to interview them. But that's not history. So, no, that's completely right. All the tendencies now are just awful.
Well, what it leads me... The reason I'm asking the question is... I've never
what's the word I want to say, advised a contemporary thesis.
Yeah.
I won't work with a student in contemporary art.
But the reason I asked the question is actually a kind of deeper question, which is, how is it that you understand the role of the critic and the relationship to the art of their time? And what distinguishes that from the art historical work that you've done.